The night was cold and silent across the wide plains of Texas. The stars above looked sharp, like a million tiny fires burning in the dark sky. Tom Grayson drove his old pickup truck down the dirt road that led to his ranch. The tires rolled slow, crunching over gravel, and the headlights cut through the heavy fog that had started to rise from the fields. It was just another long night after a long day of work, or so he thought. But something strange caught his eye. A figure stood by the roadside, almost glowing faintly in the fog. Tom slowed his truck, unsure if he was seeing right. The figure was tall, thin, and holding the hands of 3 small children. They looked lost and scared. Their clothes were torn and there was dust all over them. Tom felt a pull inside his chest, a farmer's instinct, maybe a human one, to help. He stopped the truck and rolled down the window. "You folks all right out here?" he called. The tall figure turned. The woman's face shimmered under the light. Her skin wasn't like anything human. It had a faint silver hue and her eyes reflected light like polished glass. The children hid behind her legs, trembling. Tom blinked. "Well, I'll be damned," he whispered. "You're not from around here, are you?" The woman's voice was calm but cold. "Stay away," she said. "We don't need your help, human." That word, human, made Tom frown. He got out of the truck slowly, hands raised to show he meant no harm. "Look, lady, it's freezing out here. You got 3 kids. You need food, maybe shelter. I got room at the ranch." She shook her head. "We don't take pity from primitives." Tom almost laughed. "Primitives? Ma'am, I'm the only one offering you a ride before the coyotes or the night drones find you." The woman's eyes widened slightly at that last word. Tom noticed it, fear, real fear. He followed her gaze and saw lights in the distance moving fast. Small glowing dots zipped across the horizon, scanning beams sweeping across the ground. "Who's looking for you?" he asked. She hesitated. The children clung tighter. "Hunters," she whispered. "We escaped, but they'll find us soon." Tom didn't waste another second. "Get in my truck, now!" The woman froze. "You don't understand," I said. "Get in my truck right now." Tom snapped, louder this time. His tone carried the kind of command that came from years of dealing with storms, cattle, and worse. "You want those kids alive, you get in." The drone's lights grew brighter, closer. The air began to hum with a strange metallic sound. Finally, the alien woman grabbed her children's hands and climbed into the truck's back seat. The youngest was crying softly. Tom slammed the door shut, jumped behind the wheel, and hit the gas. The old engine roared as they sped off down the muddy road. Behind them, blue search beams sliced through the fog. A drone swooped low, scanning. Tom cursed and turned sharply into the field. The truck bounced hard, throwing dust and dirt. He flicked off the headlights. They drove in darkness, guided only by the moonlight. "Hold on tight," he shouted. The alien woman held her children close. The oldest boy stared at Tom with wide eyes, eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. "Why are you helping us?" he asked in a trembling voice. Tom didn't look back. "Because someone has to." Minutes later, the lights disappeared. Tom slowed the truck near a small ridge. The house came into view, a lonely ranch house surrounded by fences, barns, and open land. He parked behind the barn, hidden from the road. "You'll be safe here," he said quietly. The woman stepped out slowly, still watching him. "You risked your life. For strangers," Tom shrugged. "Wouldn't be the first time." She tilted her head, curious. "Who are you, really?" "Just a rancher," he replied, walking toward the barn. But there was something in his voice that said more, a calmness that came from someone who had seen too much. Inside the barn, Tom pulled out some old blankets and placed them near the haystack. "It's not much," he said, "but it's warm. You can stay tonight. We'll figure something out in the morning." The children curled up on the blankets. The woman sat quietly, watching Tom with uncertain eyes. "My name is Rena," she said after a pause. "Rena Vell." "Tom," he said simply. "Tom Grayson." For a moment there was peace, the sound of crickets, the whisper of wind through the wood. But as Tom turned to leave, he noticed something strange on the outside wall of his barn. A small mark glowed faintly blue, almost like a burn pattern. He stepped closer. The mark pulsed once like it was alive. Rena saw it too, and her face turned pale. "They found us," she whispered. Tom looked back toward the dark horizon, jaw tightening. "Then we better be ready," he said quietly. The night around them grew colder, but the silence was gone. Somewhere out there, the hunters were coming. And for the first time in years, Tom Grayson felt the old fire return. The same fire that once burned in every Deathworlder who ever stood against the stars. The first rays of morning light spread across the Grayson ranch, painting the dry grass in shades of gold. Tom stood by the porch, his coffee steaming in the cold air. The truck was covered in dust from last night's escape, and he could still hear the echo of engines in his mind. But for now, everything was quiet. Inside the barn, Rena Vell and her 3 children were still asleep. The youngest, barely 5, held a small glowing pendant in her hand. It pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Tom didn't know what it was, but he knew one thing. Those kids had been through hell. He set out some food on the old wooden table. Bread, fruit, and milk. He wasn't sure if they could eat human food, but he had to try. Then he went to check the mark he'd seen last night on the barn wall. The strange blue burn was still there. It shimmered in daylight, faint but alive. Tom ran his fingers close to it. Not touching, just feeling the warmth. It wasn't natural. It was a tracker. Rena woke soon after. Her hair glowed softly under the morning sun, and her eyes scanned the room like someone used to danger. When she saw Tom outside, she quickly woke the children. Tom turned when he heard their footsteps. "Morning," he said, forcing a calm tone. Rena nodded slightly. "You shouldn't have brought us here. They can track us through the air, through signals, even through memory traces." Tom smirked. "Well, lucky for us, this old ranch doesn't have much of that fancy tech. Only thing here that remembers me is my horse." She didn't smile. "You don't understand. They will not stop. The people hunting us are not soldiers, they are cleaners. They erase problems." Tom looked her straight in the eye. "Then I guess I'll be your problem for a while." Her expression softened for a moment. "Why do you care, human? Your kind doesn't even leave your own planet anymore." He shrugged. "Maybe I'm old-fashioned. Maybe I still believe in doing what's right." The oldest boy stepped forward. His name was Errol. "Mother said humans were dangerous," he said quietly. "But you're not." Tom crouched down to his level. "Kid, sometimes dangerous is what you need to be when the bad guys show up." That made the boy smile a little. Rena watched silently. She had grown up believing humans were backward, too emotional, too simple, too reckless. Yet this man, this quiet rancher, had risked his life for strangers from the stars. There was something unsettling about that, something powerful. Tom spent the rest of the morning working around the ranch. He fixed the fences, fed the animals, and tried to act normal. But every sound made him glance toward the sky. He could feel it, the calm before something big. By noon, Rena and the children came outside. She looked around the ranch with cautious eyes. The open land stretched far, and the air smelled of hay and freedom. Her youngest pointed at a cow and laughed. The first sound of joy since they met. Tom looked at her. "Never seen a cow before?" "No," Rena said softly. "On my world, we grow food from air and stone, but this is peaceful." "Peace doesn't come free," Tom said. "You have to build it. Sometimes fight for it." She turned to him, curious. "You speak like someone who has fought before." Tom didn't answer right away. He wiped his hands on a cloth, eyes fixed on the distant hills. "Let's just say I've seen enough wars for a few lifetimes." Rena studied him. The way he moved, the scars on his hands, the look in his eyes. He wasn't just a farmer. Something about him was different, deeper. That night, after the kids had fallen asleep, Rena walked out of the barn and found Tom sitting by the porch with his rifle across his knees. The stars above them were bright again, and the quiet hum of crickets filled the air. "They'll come soon," she said. "They always do," Tom nodded slowly. "I know." She looked at him, confused. "You're not afraid?" He smiled faintly. "Fear's useful. Keeps you alive. But panic? That gets people killed." A moment of silence passed. The night wind carried the faint smell of ozone. Distant engines far away but coming closer. Rena turned to him. "You could still run. Leave us here. Save yourself." Tom stood, his shadow long against the starlight. "Ma'am, I don't run from problems." "I build fences, fix things, and if something comes through my gate uninvited..." He loaded a cartridge into the rifle. "I send it back where it came from." She stared at him, half in awe, half in disbelief. "You are unlike any being I've met." Tom glanced at the sky again, eyes narrowing as a faint red light flickered on the horizon. "Get your kids inside," he said quietly. "What is it?" "Trouble," he answered. "And this time it's not just drones." The calm of the ranch was ending. The hunters were coming. And Tom Grayson, the humble rancher, was about to remind the galaxy what kind of people humans truly were. The wind had changed. Tom felt it before he saw the lights. The sky to the east shimmered faintly like heat waves above sand. But this wasn't heat, it was energy. Something big was coming. By dawn, the air carried a strange hum. The cattle grew restless and the birds had vanished. Even the dogs wouldn't bark. They just hid under the porch, tails between their legs. Tom stood at the edge of his ranch with his old rifle in hand, staring at the horizon. He didn't need fancy scanners to know what that sound meant. Ships. Behind him, Rena stepped out of the barn, her silver skin reflecting the dim morning light. "They've found us," she whispered. Tom didn't answer. He just squinted toward the rising sun. 3 dark shapes were descending, cutting through the clouds like blades. Smaller crafts followed, spreading out in a hunt formation. They were coming fast. Rena's heart pounded. "We have to leave now." "There's still time to reach the canyon." Tom shook his head. "They'll catch you in open land. This ranch has cover and I've got defenses." Rena frowned. "Defenses? Against them?" Tom's lips curved into a faint grin. "You'd be surprised what a man builds when he's got too much time and too many regrets." He turned and walked back to the barn, flipping open an old metal panel near the tool racks. Inside was a set of dusty equipment, not farming tools, but relics of war. Old human tech, modified by hand. Mini drone sensors, plasma trip mines, and shock coils. He hadn't used them in years, but his hands remembered every part. Rena watched in silence as Tom armed the perimeter, planting devices across the fence line and setting up small EMP traps. The way he moved, fast, practiced, it wasn't the work of a simple rancher. "You were a soldier," she said finally. Tom didn't look up. Once, long time ago. The sky darkened as the first hunter ship dropped low over the hills. The sound was deafening, a deep mechanical growl that made the ground tremble. Tom grabbed his rifle, its metal polished but old, the barrel fitted with a strange energy coil. "Keep the kids in the cellar," he said. "And don't come out till I say." Rena hesitated. "You can't fight them alone." He gave her a calm look. "I don't plan to fight alone. I've got this land, and she fights back harder than most soldiers I've met." Rena didn't understand what he meant, until the first hunter stepped out of the ship. The creature was tall, armored in black metal with glowing blue eyes. Its weapon pulsed with light as it scanned the area. A second one followed, then a third. They moved in perfect sync like wolves tracking prey. Tom crouched behind an old tractor, rifle steady. When the first hunter crossed the outer fence, the ground exploded with blue light. The EMP trap went off, sending a shockwave through their systems. Sparks flew from their suits. "Welcome to Earth," Tom muttered. Then he fired. The rifle roared, not like a normal gun, but with a deep electric pulse. The first shot hit one hunter square in the chest, blowing it back several feet. The others turned instantly, returning fire. Bolts of plasma tore through the field, burning the dirt and setting hay bales on fire. Tom rolled behind cover, reloading quickly. He shot again, and another hunter fell. Inside the barn, Rena covered her children, their small bodies shaking with every explosion. The oldest, Errol, peeked through a crack and saw Tom fighting. "Mother, he's winning," the boy whispered, awe in his voice. Rena's heart twisted. She had seen soldiers fall before alien weapons, seen cities burn. But this single human fought with the calm of a man defending his home. Not for glory, not for orders, but for survival. Outside, one hunter managed to flank Tom. It aimed at his back, but before it could fire, Rena ran out, her hands glowing with violet energy. A blast of force hit the hunter, throwing it into the fence. She stood beside Tom, chest heaving. "I told you to stay inside," Tom said without looking at her. "And I told you," she replied, raising her glowing hands again. "I don't take pity." For a moment, they stood back to back, human and alien, farmer and fugitive, surrounded by smoke and burning grass. The hunters regrouped, their leader stepping forward, armor gleaming like black glass. It pointed its weapon at them. "Surrender the Varnak traitor," it said in a deep mechanical voice, "and you will live." Tom spat into the dirt. "You picked the wrong planet, pal." Before the leader could respond, Tom pressed a button on his belt. A hidden turret rose from the barn roof, humming to life. It opened fire, raining hot plasma across the field. The hunters scattered, their ship engines roaring as they tried to retreat. But Tom wasn't done. He fired one last round, hitting the ship's power cell. The explosion tore through the valley, lighting the sky with fire. When the smoke cleared, only silence remained. Rena stared at the burning wrecks, speechless. You fought them off," she said softly. Tom lowered his rifle and took a deep breath. "Yeah," he said, staring at the flames. "But they'll be back. And next time they won't come alone." He looked at the horizon again, and somewhere deep inside he felt that old fire returning, the one he thought he'd buried long ago. Rena turned to him, her voice trembling. "Who are you really, Tom Grayson?" He looked at her with a quiet smile. "Just a rancher," he said, "who remembers how to fight." The air smelled like smoke and metal. The sun had just climbed above the ridge, shining weakly through the haze of destruction. The once quiet ranch now looked like a war zone. Burnt grass, wrecked alien machines, and the scent of ozone filled the air. Tom Grayson stood among the ruins, his rifle still warm in his hands. He had survived the night, but barely. Rena Vell walked slowly through the wreckage. Her silver skin glimmered with ash and dust. Her children followed close behind, silent and wide-eyed. They looked around the field, staring at the fallen hunters, their armor black and shining like burnt glass. They had never seen death this close before. Tom kicked one of the broken helmets with his boot. It rolled over, revealing a cracked, glowing visor. He could see his reflection in it, an old, tired man with scars that never quite faded. He turned away. "You fought before," Rena said quietly, her voice low but certain. Tom didn't answer. He just started picking up the burned debris, tossing it into a pile near the fence. "Those weapons," she continued. "That ship turret. The traps. Those aren't human farming tools. No simple rancher builds plasma defenses in a barn." Tom finally stopped and looked at her. "You're right. I wasn't always a rancher." Rena crossed her arms. "Then what were you?" He sighed, the sound long and heavy. "A soldier. A Deathworlder." The name made her blink. She had heard that word before, in hushed tones, in fear-filled stories told by generals and diplomats. Deathworlders, the humans of Earth, the species the galaxy had tried to forget. "You're lying," she said softly. Deathworlders were myths, beasts that burned worlds and fought until nothing lived. Tom gave a tired smile. "Not myths. Just people. Tougher than most. Meaner when we have to be." He walked toward the barn and opened a large crate near the back. Inside were old metal boxes stamped with faded symbols, the crest of the Terran Frontier Corps. He opened one. Inside were medals, patches, and a small holographic photo of young soldiers in dusty armor, him among them, much younger, smiling. Rena stepped closer. "You fought in the Galactic border wars." "Yeah," Tom said quietly. "Long time ago. Back when humans still left Earth to help others. Back when we thought we could make a difference." Rena touched one of the medals gently.
"And what happened?"
Tom looked out at the sky. "We realized the galaxy didn't want saving. They wanted control. So we came home. We built fences instead of fleets." Silence filled the barn. Dust floated in the golden light coming through the cracks in the roof. Rena finally said, "You could have told me." "And what difference would it make?" he said. "You'd still be hunted. I'd still help." She studied him. There was no pride in his voice, no desire for praise. Just quiet strength, the kind that didn't need to shout. Outside, her children played near the fence, their laughter soft and strange after such chaos. The youngest girl picked up a small flower growing between the cracks of burnt earth. "It's still alive," she said with a smile. Tom watched her and nodded. "Life's stubborn that way." Rena sat beside him on the wooden bench. "I used to think humans were fragile," she admitted. "Too emotional, too wild. But you fight with purpose. You protect without being asked." Tom leaned back. "You know, Rena, I didn't save you because you're alien, or because you had kids. I saved you because you needed help. That's it. That's all." Rena's voice softened. "You don't understand what that means to my people. On Varnak, help comes with a price, loyalty, blood, debt." Tom smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time someone showed your people how humans do things." A faint rumble echoed across the hills. Tom stood quickly, scanning the horizon. "Hear that?" Rena nodded. "Engines. But different this time, heavier," Tom frowned. "Bigger ships. They're sending reinforcements." He grabbed his communicator, a small rusted device from his war days. It barely worked anymore, but he pressed it anyway, sending a coded signal into the sky. Just in case, he muttered. Rena looked at him. In case what? In case this turns into more than I can handle, Tom said. She watched him, realizing for the first time that he wasn't fighting just for her. He was fighting for his land, his home, and something deeper, a promise humans had made long ago, never to let the strong crush the weak. As the sun began to dip, Tom walked out to the edge of the field. He looked up at the sky where faint lights blinked, ships moving in formation far above the clouds. He whispered to himself, if they want to fight, they'll get one. Behind him, Rena stood quietly, her children clutching her hands. For the first time, she didn't feel like a fugitive. She felt like she was standing beside a force that even her world's armies feared. A human with a cause. And somewhere deep within her, something changed. She no longer saw Tom Grayson as a simple rancher. He was something far older, far more dangerous, a reminder to the stars of what humanity truly was when pushed too far. The wind carried his words softly through the field. Let them come. The first light of dawn crept slowly over the plains, painting the sky in pale gold and gray. A cold mist rolled over the fields, thick and heavy, muffling sound and blurring the horizon. But beneath that calm beauty, tension pulsed like a living thing. The air hummed faintly with static, the kind that came before a storm. Tom Grayson stood on the porch, hat pulled low, watching the sky. He hadn't slept all night. His rifle leaned against the railing beside him, and a mug of untouched coffee cooled by his side. Rena's words echoed in his head. They always come back. And now, they had. He could feel it before he saw it. Low vibrations through the ground, distant but growing. He turned to the barn where Rena and her children slept. Showtime, he murmured. Moments later, the faint glow of engines appeared in the clouds, then another and another. The ships were bigger this time, sleeker, built for war. They moved in silence until one broke through the mist, descending like a metal storm cloud. Rena rushed out, her eyes wide. That's a command vessel, she said breathlessly. They sent the high hunters. Tom, this isn't a raid. This is an extermination. Tom adjusted his hat and gave a half smile. Guess I should have charged rent. He ran to the old control shed behind the barn and flipped a series of rusty switches. Power surged through the ranch. Blue sparks flickered along the fence line as buried emitters came alive. A soft hum built up into a steady vibration. The old defense grid had woken from its long sleep. Rena followed, shocked. This is human technology? Tom nodded. Modified frontier gear. Salvaged from the war. My own handiwork. Never thought I'd use it again. Will it hold? She asked. He looked at her, his eyes steady. Long enough. The children were hiding in the cellar again, but this time Rena didn't tell them to stay quiet. She told them to be brave. She stood beside Tom at the edge of the ranch, watching as the ships landed across the hills. Dust rose in waves. Hundreds of soldiers marched out, black-armored, faceless, moving in perfect rhythm. Rena's voice shook. There are too many. Tom raised his rifle. That's what they always say. The first wave came fast. Plasma fire lit the mist in bright streaks of blue and red. The ranch's defense grid flared to life, crackling with electricity. When the soldiers touched the fence, they burst into sparks. Tom fired his rifle, each shot sharp and precise. One fell, then another. His movements were calm, controlled, like he'd done this 1,000 times. Rena joined him, her hands glowing with violet light. Energy blasts erupted from her palms, hitting soldiers with silent force. For a moment it was chaos, light, smoke, and screams. But still they came. Tom shouted over the noise, Rena! The east fence! They're breaching! She turned, summoning all her strength. Her power cracked through the air, sealing the gap with a barrier of light. Sweat ran down her face and her knees shook, but she held it. Hold steady, Tom yelled, firing until the rifle's barrel glowed. Then came the sound he'd been dreading, a deep mechanical rumble louder than thunder. The command vessel's belly opened and something enormous dropped out. A siege walker. Its metal legs slammed into the ground, shaking the earth. Its cannons began to charge, red light building at the tips. Tom's eyes hardened. That's their ace, Rena gasped. It'll destroy everything. Tom sprinted toward the barn. Not if I hit first. Inside, he yanked off a tarp, revealing an old launcher, something that didn't belong in a farmer's life. heavy, scarred, and humming faintly with unstable energy. He carried it to the field, knelt, and locked onto the walker. Rena's voice cracked. "That weapon, how do you still have it?" "Because humans never throw away something that works," Tom replied, pulling the trigger. The missile streaked upward with a roar, trailing smoke and blue fire. It slammed into the walker's chest. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the explosion hit. The shockwave knocked everyone flat, sending dirt and metal flying. When the dust cleared, the walker was gone. Only a crater remained. Tom coughed, his ears ringing. Rena stumbled to his side, helping him up. "You did it," she whispered. He smiled weakly. "We did," but as he looked up, his expression changed. The sky was glowing again, not from fire, but from something else. A massive shadow loomed above the clouds, stretching across the horizon. Rena's breath caught. "That's not one of theirs." Tom narrowed his eyes. "No, that's one of ours." A deep rumble filled the air as human ships, hundreds of them, broke through the atmosphere. The Deathworlder fleet had answered his old signal. Sleek, gray warships lined the sky, blocking the morning sun. Tom let out a quiet breath. "Took them long enough?" Rena stared upward, awe in her voice. "You called them?" "Didn't have to," he said, loading a fresh round into his rifle. "Once a Deathworlder sends a distress call, they all come." And as the alien hunters turned their ships to flee, the sky above Earth burned with the light of humanity's return. The morning sky was no longer blue. It burned with silver and gold as hundreds of ships broke through the clouds. The sound was thunder itself echoing across the plains, shaking the windows of the old ranch. Rena Vell stood frozen, her children beside her, eyes wide as they stared at the impossible sight above them. Tom Grayson simply watched in silence. His face was calm, but his eyes glowed faintly with memory. He had seen that sight once before, long ago, on a battlefield halfway across the galaxy. The ships of humanity, Deathworlders, descending together like a storm no one could stop. One of Rena's children whispered, "Mother, are those humans too?" Rena nodded slowly. "Yes, little one. Those are his people." A massive ship, larger than the alien command vessel, hovered directly above the ranch. Its hull bore old markings of the Terran Frontier Corps, worn but proud. Its engines rumbled like mountains shifting. A deep voice boomed through the air, calm and cold. "This is Commander Hale of the Deathworlder fleet. Identify your beacon source." Tom reached for his old communicator. The device was cracked and dusty, but the signal light still blinked. He pressed the button. "This is Captain Tom Grayson, retired. Frontier Corps. Designation TX-47. You're a long way from the front, Commander." There was a pause. Then a small chuckle came through the static. "Captain Grayson, you old ghost. We thought you were dead." "Not yet," Tom said, "but I could use a hand cleaning up my yard." The fleet above shifted formation. Smaller crafts detached, cutting through the clouds. In moments, Deathworlder dropships landed across the fields, engines screaming. Soldiers poured out, humans in matte gray armor, faces hidden behind visors, their movements sharp and efficient. Rena's people, the alien hunters, froze. The battlefield went silent. For the first time, the predators realized they were now prey. The lead alien shouted an order, his voice trembling. "Fall back! Evacuate!" But it was too late. The Deathworlders advanced, their weapons glowing faintly blue. They didn't fire at once, they didn't have to. Their presence alone was enough to break the enemy's will. Within minutes, the hunters fled to their ships, engines screaming as they shot toward the clouds. Tom watched them go, lowering his rifle. "And just like that," he muttered, "they remember who we are." Rena turned to him, her voice soft. "You called them with that old signal?" "Didn't think it would work," Tom admitted. "Guess the network never died. We just went quiet for a while." The children peeked out from behind her legs. The youngest, Lyra, pointed at the descending ships. "They look scary," she said. Tom smiled faintly. "They are, but they're on our side." As the last of the enemy ships vanished into the sky, a group of human soldiers approached. The leader removed his helmet, a woman with sharp gray eyes and short hair. She saluted. "Captain Grayson." "It's an honor, sir." Tom shook his head. "Don't sir me. I'm retired. Haven't been one of you in a long time." The commander smiled. "Maybe, but it seems you never stopped doing the job." Rena stepped forward, hesitant. "You came for him?" The commander turned her gaze toward her. "We came because he called, Every Deathworlder responds when one of our own sends the signal. That's the rule. Rena frowned slightly. Even after all this time? Especially after all this time, the commander said. We remember our own. Tom's eyes softened. You got here fast. We were in orbit, the commander replied. Monitoring signals. The moment your beacon lit up, half the fleet turned. Rena looked between them, her expression unreadable. Your species never forgot how to fight. Tom shook his head. We just learned when to stop. The field around them was silent again, but the silence was different now. It wasn't fear, it was awe. The smell of smoke lingered, mixed with the sharp tang of ozone. Above, the ships began to turn, their engines flaring bright as they prepared to leave. Rena stepped closer to Tom. You saved us. You saved my children. Tom looked at her quietly. No, we saved you. Humanity doesn't do anything halfway. For the first time, she smiled. Maybe the galaxy was wrong about you, Tom shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time. As the last Deathworlder ship rose into the clouds, the sunlight returned, bright and warm over the scarred land. The danger had passed for now, but something larger had begun. Somewhere, far across the stars, the story of one humble rancher who stood against hunters was already spreading, and the galaxy was remembering what it had tried so hard to forget. Humans might be quiet, but when they rise together. The smoke had cleared, and the sky returned to a soft blue. The roar of engines faded, leaving only the quiet hum of wind across the open plains. For the first time in days, the ranch was calm. The birds had come back, timidly landing on the broken fence. Tom Grayson stood at the edge of his land, hat in hand, staring at the distant horizon. The battlefield around him was scarred but alive. Pieces of alien metal still smoked in the grass. The soil was blackened, the barn half burned, yet somehow it still stood, like him. Behind him, Rena Vell and her 3 children walked slowly across the yard. The smallest, Lyra, carried a single wildflower she had found among the ashes. It's growing again, she said softly. Tom smiled faintly. Things always find a way. The Deathworlder fleet hovered in orbit now, their shadows still visible as faint silver dots in the sky. They had done what they came to do, secure the planet, eliminate the threat, and then vanish like ghosts. Humanity had reawakened, and every starfaring species in the galaxy would soon know it. Commander Hale approached Tom one last time, her boots crunching over dry earth. Fleet's heading out, she said. We'll leave a relay satellite in orbit in case they come again. Tom nodded. I appreciate it. She studied him for a long moment. You could come with us, you know. The Corps would take you back in a heartbeat. You've still got it, Tom chuckled quietly. I think I'll stick with the cows. They don't shoot back. Hale smiled, shaking her head. You always did prefer peace to medals. Then, more softly, she added, you reminded the galaxy who we are. Tom, after all these years, one man did what a fleet couldn't, made them remember the name human. He tipped his hat, didn't do it for glory, just did what needed doing. When she left, her ship rose into the sky, engines glowing like dawn. The roar faded until only silence remained again. Rena stepped beside Tom, watching the streaks of light vanish into the upper atmosphere. They're gone, she said quietly. He nodded. They'll be back if they're needed. Her eyes shone with something deeper than gratitude, respect. Your people. You're not like the others. My kind always thought humans were reckless, emotional, weak. But now I understand. You don't fight because you love war. You fight because you love peace. Tom looked at her, his expression unreadable. Maybe we just hate bullies, she smiled. Whatever the reason, you changed something today. The galaxy saw you stand alone, and then they saw your people answer your call. They'll think twice before hunting the helpless again. Tom said nothing. He turned his gaze toward the barn, where her children were playing with the ranch dog. Their laughter carried through the air, light and free. For the first time, it sounded like hope. Rena walked closer, lowering her voice. You could have let us go. You could have ignored us that night. Why didn't you? Tom took a long breath before answering. Because where I come from, you don't walk away from someone who needs help. Doesn't matter what color their skin is or what planet they come from. You see someone lost, you stop the truck. Her throat tightened. She reached out, placing a hand over his. You saved my children, Tom, and maybe you saved something bigger than that. He looked down at her hand, rough human skin against luminous alien light. Maybe, he said softly. But let's keep that between us. Rena smiled faintly. It won't stay between us. Stories like this, they travel. My people will talk. The hunters will whisper. They'll say that on a quiet planet at the edge of nowhere, a human farmer stood against the stars and won. Tom chuckled, shaking his head. Sounds like they'll make it sound prettier than it was. They'll call you the Rancher of Earth, she said with a teasing smile. The man who made the Deathworlders rise again. He stared out toward the horizon where the sun was climbing high. If it keeps your people safe, they can call me whatever they like. The light touched the field, golden and warm. Rena turned to her children, calling them in for food. Tom stood there a little longer, the breeze moving through his hair. Somewhere above, the faint trail of the fleet faded into the stars. He wondered how long it would take before someone else called for help. Before another beacon lit the void, but for now, there was peace. He picked up his hat, placed it back on his head, and whispered, "Back to work." And as he walked toward the barn, the galaxy itself began to remember. The Deathworlders were still here. They were human, and when they stood together, no power in the stars could break them.